cost of transportation and other costs like insurance. So as we start lifting product that we ordered after the conflict, we are starting to bring in product priced based on the international prices following the commencement of the conflict. By the time the conflict began, the dollar, a barrel was going at $65 in terms of price of the crude oil. Today, when we entered March, the barrel went up to about $120 per barrel, almost double the price before the conflict. So what does this mean? As we enter the month of May, going into June, we are starting to see an appreciation in the price, and I believe you've already seen this on your different pump stations where you access this petroleum product. So with the current increase in retail pump prices, we are working with the oil marketing companies to ensure that it is reflective of these actual changes in the international petroleum product prices.
Uganda, like the rest of the East African region, has been affected because a substantial share of its petroleum imports originates from the Arabian Gulf. The standoff between the United States of America and Iran over the Strait of Hormuz, coupled with restricted passage of very large crude carriers and fuel tankers, has led to increased international prices for crude oil, diesel, petrol and jet fuel, alongside rising freight and insurance costs.
We continue to monitor, of course, the progress of this conflict, which we expect that as we enter June, hopefully it will subside. And once that happens, we enter what we call the recovery months of this conflict, probably 3 to 4 months of recovery for us to get back to normal operations to the extent that is possible. So we want to assure Ugandans as we go through these few months, May and June, where we will see a moderate increase in price. We continue to evaluate the global situation, and we will keep reviewing these prices. And as we return to normal operations in the coming months, definitely we'll also review these prices to mirror the global movement in the petroleum product prices.
Government says it will continue closely monitoring the market to ensure continuity of supply while discouraging smuggling, diversion of fuel products and hoarding in order to protect consumers and the economy.
People can only keep fuel to the extent possible as they are mobilizing their resources to pay off. For example, if one has brought fuel and is within a depot, you are not going to remove fuel from the depot minus paying the depot owner. And so those arrangements, normal arrangements, transactions of banks and whatnot, if you find the product has been in a depot for 4 or 5 days, it's not necessarily that somebody is holding there, but they are the normal kind of procedures to bring out the product out and onto the market. So I can comfortably say and assure the citizens that there is no hoarding we have witnessed or we have been able to get at the moment. Nonetheless, in the unlikely event that you feel so and so is hoarding, we are available. Please reach us. You be a whistleblower, let us know, and then we will be able to move and deal with such as citizens in accordance with the law.
The ministry has further called upon the public to avoid panic buying and disregard misleading information circulating on social media regarding fuel shortages across the country. Motorists in Uganda should be prepared to dig deeper into their pockets in order to power their engines. This is according to the Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, Engineer Irene Batebe. She attributes this to the current blockade at the Strait of Hormuz. Dennis Igoa for UBC.
Relatedly, in Kenya, sharp increases in fuel prices are triggering protests across the country. We have another perspective from DW.
Fuel protests are spreading across Africa as the crisis deepens. Sharp rises in petrol and diesel prices have triggered violent clashes in Kenya and the Comoros and strikes in Mozambique. Governments are scrambling to respond. In Kenya, a more than 23% increase in diesel prices last week sparked nationwide outrage and widespread protests. DW's Felix Marenga reports from Nairobi.
The rising cost of living has brought Kenyans back onto the streets. This time, strikes and protests over the price of fuel in the country. Demonstrators burnt tires and blocked roads, calling on the government to cut their costs. The protest turned deadly as police responded with force, leaving 4 people dead and 10 injured. Hundreds more were arrested and later released on bail. The strike was called by the public transport operators, ride-hailing apps and truck drivers. They vowed to ground their vehicles, demanding better fuel prices.
They do not want to hear the citizen when we say that the petroleum diesel is too much for a common person in Kenya. And in a day when someone works, you do not know the amount of money in which they pocket. And when they raise the taxes, they do not see our pockets, they only see theirs.
We import our things through our own ports. Our neighboring country like Uganda, the fuel is cheap and they don't have ports. They import their fuels through Mombasa port. So we're asking this question, how come the fuel in Kenya is more expensive more than Uganda and Ethiopia and Tanzania? Those fuels, those prices, they are not matching.
Most of the people, they're depending on fuel. They're depending on diesel. And we can't do what we are doing today when the price of fuel is above. That's what people are in the road striking.
Then the government held out an olive branch to end the standoff, a 7-day strike suspension for talks.
The strike that is ongoing is suspended for a period of 1 week to provide an avenue for consultation, negotiation between the government and the stakeholders.
Shops had remained closed in Nairobi's central business district. Business owners were left counting losses after some of their premises were broken into. For Kenyans who are barely surviving, the protests are a red card on the government's responsiveness to their rising cost of living.
The nation seems to have stepped back from the brink, at least for 7 days. But many Kenyans remain skeptical that the backroom negotiations will bear much fruit. There is public disappointment that commuters are having to pay more for their transport needs. For the operators, this could be a chance to negotiate better fuel prices at the pump. And today's apparent normalcy will be short-lived should the government and public transport stakeholders not find agreement within the week.
In more news, President Museveni has called for an overhaul of Uganda's visa system to boost tourism, urging the replacement of short-stay visas with long-term visas of at least 3 years. Now, the president remarked this at the opening of the Pearl of Africa Tourism Expo hosted at Spik Resort Munyonyo. Have a look.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for joining us.
President Museveni has officially opened the 2026 Pearl of Africa Tourism Expo, POATE, a platform envisaged to pitch Uganda as a must-visit destination.
Your presence here is a stamp of approval, is a stamp of belief, and is a demonstration not just to Ugandans, but to the international community of your conviction in this tourism agenda we have started.
Addressing visiting delegations, the president described Uganda's weather as unique and enviable, thus inviting them to explore the country's rich tourism offerings.
When we are talking of Uganda as a tourism destination, it is for comfort. If you want to live comfortably, the only irritant has been the mosquito, these insects, but we know how to control them. I'm sure here you don't see any mosquito here because we can kill them. We don't have to be there. Otherwise, it's very comfortable to live here.
Considering the importance of visa services in tourist attraction, President says removing short-stay visa barriers and issuing long-term visas of 3 years or more would make it easier for tourists to experience Uganda fully.
Because apparently one of the, I don't know why, They have been giving short visas of 3 months. But the Americans complained, say, we give you visa of 3 years. The Americans give us a visa of 3 years, and you give them of only 3 months. Why? What are you worried about? Give him of 3 years multiple entry visa. Let him go, come back if he wants.
Museveni reaffirmed government's commitment to tourism as a key driver of economic growth, job creation, and foreign exchange earnings. Officials from the ministry and sector agencies emphasized that Uganda remains one of Africa's most attractive destinations, thanks to its biodiversity, stable environment, and reputation for warm hospitality.
Tourism continues to contribute significantly to GDP, create employment across the value entrepreneurship, and attract both domestic and international investment.
Uganda has demonstrated resilience and capability in responding to health challenges, including HIV/AIDS, COVID-19, and other global public health threats like Ebola. This confidence in Uganda's system strengthens our image as a reliable and safe destination for visitors and investors alike.
Running under the theme Wanderlust, the Pearl of Africa Tourism Expo is a window showcasing Uganda's diverse attractions from wildlife and adventure tourism to culture, heritage, and natural landscapes that reinforce the country's identity as the Pearl of Africa.
Uganda has taken a significant step toward narrowing the digital divide through a comprehensive ICT inclusion program aimed at empowering persons with disabilities. This initiative, strictly aligned with Digital Vision 2040, identifies digital inclusion as a core pillar to ensure no citizen is left behind in the country's economic transformation. Mark Wadulo has the details.
A recent specialized training has equipped 33 persons with disabilities, that is 17 women and 16 men, with critical skills to navigate the digital landscape. Beyond specialized hardware, the program emphasized utilizing free built-in accessibility features in computers like screen magnification and speech recognition software, already present in standard operating systems.
The training had 2 cohorts from March and April. The first cohort targeted persons with vision impairment, that is low vision and blind. And the second cohort targeted persons with physical impairment and deaf.
These efforts address a critical gap in a country where only 40% of persons with disability have access to information technology.
Because we have been able to identify good workable innovation strategies that we can use to bridge the communication gap for the majority that I talked about.
To sustain momentum, government is establishing dedicated ICT innovation hubs specifically for persons with disabilities. Addressing communication barriers for persons with disabilities remains a priority for government and these stakeholders.
What NITA has done through Ministry of ICT and also through the World Bank funding, we are setting up what we are calling the ICT innovation hubs for people with disabilities. These innovation hubs, we have equipped them with all the modern technologies, assistive technologies, and in those centers we are going to be training.
Practitioners note that negative attitudes and a lack of awareness among employers remain significant hurdles.
In another development, Uganda's pension sector is drawing lessons from Kenya and other African countries on diversifying investments into infrastructure and real estate projects as a way of reducing dependence on foreign borrowing for major government projects.
Uganda's pension sector is increasingly looking towards the real estate industry as part of efforts to diversify its investment portfolio. The discussions were held during a precursor conference ahead of the 4th Alternative Investment Conference slated for July under the theme Investment Readiness for Pension Funds.
What we have seen in Botswana, what we have seen in Zambia, what we have seen in South Africa, that if you understand real estate but also understand your captive market. You can generate returns of up to 20% if you understand who you are doing this real estate for. In South Africa, for example, real estate for retired persons is a very high earning segment. In Kenya, we have been told student housing, providing hostels of a very high quality, very similar to hotels, has been providing up to 25% returns, attracting American investors in Nairobi.
And the question there is, who is the scheme? And what is the value of the scheme that they bring to the table besides money? And that comes from the understanding of who the scheme is. Once you understand who we are, what we can provide, can we aggregate? In this example, do we have a huge student population? Do we understand who we are? Who are we as a scheme, and where are we going? And that allows for even an easier discussion point or investment case for any pension scheme when they're looking at that. Because before it was put up a building, that's it. Put up a building, that's it. But today, understanding who you are and you bring the uniqueness allows for better understanding of risk.
Organized by the Certified Financial Analysts Society of East Africa, CFA, the meeting attracted key stakeholders in Uganda's pension sector, including the regulator and investment professionals. Participants examined project design models, risk assessment mechanisms, and expected returns on investments aimed at protecting savers' funds. According to the Uganda Retirement Benefits Regulatory Authority, UBRA, the meeting comes at a time when government interest is growing in utilizing locally sourced funds to finance capital-intensive infrastructure projects, including investment in the real estate sector.
What is coming out strongly? What should be involved in structuring that kind of investment vehicle? And what is also coming out strongly is making assurance that members' money is protected and is invested well. So it's not an issue of just waking up and dream of a project and then put members' funds. No, that's not what it is. What are the number of projects that we think we are going to have? The housing is one of them. Infrastructure, schools, hospitals, and roads are also another. The biggest driver is that that project must have a liquidity to the scheme, and it must be profitable. We are not looking at projects that are going to be white elephants, not generating any revenues to the scheme.
Investment experts emphasized that successful real estate investment requires proper structuring, strong governance systems, and a clear understanding of regulatory frameworks to guarantee sustainable returns.
Now, to say that government has zero risk is quite risky as a statement because anything could happen within a sovereign, and therefore to build an economy, to build a nation, to build a base of an economy, there is need to diversify our investment options such that the pension assets that exist can build directly into the development of that economy. Now, infrastructure in itself opens up the nation to other areas of development. It forms the underbelly of additional economic development.
China recently enacted a sweeping zero-tariff policy, granting duty-free access for 100% of tariff lines to 53 African nations. But what does this new policy, which will run for at least 2 years, mean for Uganda, a largely agrarian economy?
The inclusion of non-least developed countries like South Africa, Nigeria and Kenya means that Uganda's previous advantage has effectively ended. This development creates preference erosion, where Uganda must compete on equal terms with other developed African economies that possess superior industrial capacity and infrastructure. At least 7 to 8% of Ugandan coffee is exported with value addition, meaning that over 90% is exported raw. For Uganda, The primary challenge is moving to a value-added metric.
Our share of exports to the China market is just about 0.1%. From the African continent, we're exporting about $140 million to the Chinese market out of the total of $123 billion that the continent of Africa exports to the China market. We need to make sure that we export more value out of the volumes.
To remain competitive in the $21 trillion Chinese consumer market, Uganda must reduce its domestic production costs, targeting lower rates for electricity and water to match the president's goal of 5 cents per kilowatt hour. But as the current implementation window is a test phase set to conclude on April 30th, 2028, it will give African nations like Uganda a limited time to prove that they can meet Chinese demand standards.
Trade negotiations make trade possible. It is the private sector that make trade happen. As I've said, we negotiate the rules of origin to make sure that they are friendly. We negotiate the tariff liberalization. We negotiate the removal of non-tariff barriers. There are SPS, sanitary and phytosanitary arrangements to ensure that there is that good environment for trade. In short, we take the horse to the well, but we cannot force it to drink.
Since 2022, all food manufacturers exporting to China must register with the General Administration of Customs of China and comply with strict sanitary and phytosanitary standards, including testing for chemical residues, pest control, supported by detailed management records and tariff purposes, and ensure strong product traceability and branding.
We conducted advanced analysis of trade with the 53 African countries with which we have diplomatic ties, put together a list of key commodities such as copper, and identified companies eligible for preferential treatment to help those companies seize opportunities to expand imports from Africa.
The Ugandan government is supporting this transition by attaching dedicated trade attachés to missions in China to improve market intelligence and facilitate buyer-to-buyer connections.
This was not an occasion to sign a further number of agreements. It's about making a real difference in the lives of our respective people. So I think it's very important what you stress. What can people expect from this? There have been a lot of discussions in many sectors. Over 13 sectors have been discussed in the fields of commerce, in the fields of trade, in the field of migration, the field of energy. I think what our people can expect is concrete improvement in our efforts to grow stronger together. So when it comes to trade, I think we're looking at trade in bigger volumes, but also considering the very important trade that we have between communities at border areas. So a lot of discussions have turned around how do we make these things easier. So it's not just looking at the big people and the big money, if you want. I think we also looked a lot at day-to-day issues. When we look at fisheries, what are our fishermen going through? I think these are efforts that were made in all parties, in all discussions, to see how do we improve things in various sectors at various levels, be it the level of small communities, but also of big industries. I think what is very clear and what we take away from this meeting is that we are two people who are separated by borders, granted, but of course we share a lot more than just these borders that separate us, and it's about making sure that we, the states, accompany our people who are already working very closely together.
Check out the Karuma Hydroelectric Power Plant complex network of tunnels in our Sounds of Business. With a few cases of Ebola confirmed in Uganda, ditch cash for now. Use mobile money or cards for your day-to-day transactions to stay safe. Thank you so much for watching to the very end. I'm your host, Maureen Babidie. Goodbye.
Exercise can't be sustained. Eating can't be stopped. It's even harder to lose weight. Come and give it a try. Genshikang L-carnitine chromium capsules. Plant extract, scientific ratio. Take 3 capsules each time. The active ingredient accelerates fat burning. Eat twice a day. Don't take a detour. Weight loss starts now. Genshikang L-carnitine with chromium capsules helps you stay in shape. Please follow medical advice when taking this product.
And that's it for today. Till the next episode.
Like a daily bando, like a daily bando, like a daily bando. Omuliro nguwulira muli mumutima kukankana like drums. Kalakata, kalakata, enendungu yakusabula. Mikono juu, free your fire, free your fire, free your fire.
I know what Uganda needs. When General Caleb Akantwanaho retired, Salim Saleh presented his long, detailed analysis of Uganda's economy and structured recommendations for improvement in the form of the Third National Development Plan, NDP-3, to President Museveni. He laid out the kinds of problems that many Ugandans feel every day, but rarely see captured in one place. He was doing what he has done for years, breaking down the problems holding back ordinary Ugandans. He talked about distortions in factors of production, such as land conflicts that choke investment, the high cost of